Are you prepared for some Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on the Sega Dreamcast? Hello there, Mario. I'd like to propose a challenge for you to prove your might. In my travels, I came into possession of a mystical map. It's yours to keep. Take it with you to the city of Rogueport. In your journey, you must never take damage. Sounds simple? Well, you also can't farm badges like Power Rush or readjust your max HP. One more thing, you also can't Super Guard. You're smart though, so I know you won't need to. Let me know if you beat the pit with 100 trials too. Take care, Peach.
Wow, I guess I gotta do it now.
But surely you also remember some of Peach's additional rules, right? Well, let's go over them, as well as every other rule I can see to track this one thing enforced. Alright, let's do this thing.
Can't touch this.
He's less than nothing. Extra commands are available right off the bat, so 2 standard guards to jump away on him and he's out. We are then introduced to Goombella, our first partner. She's adequate as is, but becomes much better later on in the game. You'll see what I mean once we reach chapter 5. Now let's tackle the first argument against a challenge like this, in that super guards exist. So obviously I knew this, and obviously I'm going to ban super guards in this challenge. For those of you unaware, super guards are a skill that enable the character being attacked to parry an enemy attack. The timing is more strict than a normal guard, but in return, you take 0 damage and deal recoil damage in return. So yeah, it makes this challenge way too easy. Personally, I think there are more powerful options to effectively crush enemies, but I'll ban this option to keep you all happy, okay? Good. Anyways, there are more fights coming up, but they're easy. Goombas, for example, have only 2 HP, and fire flowers can be bought from the nearby shop doing 3 damage to them all, instantly knocking them out. And when used alongside our first badge, Power Smash, allowing our hammer to deal 4 damage in a single hit, the boss of the prologue, Blooper, is eliminated on turn 2 before even getting a chance to attack. Early in the game, where enemy HP is relatively low, items are often our best choice to wipe out foes quickly and without risk. And the few who can't be eliminated by items alone have low enough attack power where guards protect us from any and all damage. We are not presented with another actual threat up until Hooktail, the boss of chapter 1. And by then, we're given some fun badges to add to our sash. For example, we have Power Bounce, which we'll be seeing shortly. There's also our second partner, Koops, who has a natural defense point. This may sound small since it's only 1 point, but in actuality, it makes him all around one of the safest partners to fight alongside, as he can take hits better than other partners.
Can't touch this.
Unfortunately, nothing we've gained helps against piercing attacks. It makes Hooktail in particular a boss that demands a very specific... Well, that's one heck of an introduction to another potential reset hazard. Yeah, the game can just choose to drop stage traps in your head and force you to take damage. And while we have defense and Koops already, Mario won't have any source of defense until chapter 4. Stay sharp, folks. Anyhow, to beat Hooktail without taking damage is possible thanks to a combination of Power Bounce and Attack of XR. These badges allow Mario to repeatedly strike Hooktail with the sound of crickets playing every time he stomps on her. Each chirp reduces Hooktail's attack and defense by 1, with her defense dropping to 0 and her attack falling as low as 1. At this rate, her stomps fail to put even a dent into Koops' HP, and after refusing Hooktail's advances and subsequently finishing her off, we conclude chapter 1. Now, after defeating a chapter boss, we gain a new special move. Some are useful, like the one we just gained in Earth Tremor, allowing us to dish out up to 6 damage at a time, and others like Sweet Treat, well, not so much. When you can't take damage, healing becomes a lot less valuable. FP is nice I guess, but that's really it. In preparation for the upcoming chapter, I did a lot of gambling at the Pianta Parlor. I call myself Don Pianta, not just because it's what I call myself on my Discord server, but because I just love to make bank on the slots. And in between this and exchanging star pieces for badges Dazzle has on hand like Flower Savers and Flower Finder, I stocked up on badges I felt would be helpful for later in the challenge, as well as items from Charlatan I know I'll need later in the challenge. Remember when I brought up a complaint surrounding boost cheats and other means of evasion? We'll talk about that in a couple of chapters from now on.
Can't touch this.
These 3 are a laughable trio at best, as the combo of Earth Tremor and our now super ranked Koops Power Shell can OKO belt them for max HP. And both Vivian and Marilyn are unable to harm us, as the former has only 1 attack power, so, you know, just guard. And the latter, despite having 2 attack power and being stronger, is shut up thanks to the badge we just found, Damage Dodge. This badge reduces the damage we take further by 1 when we guard. So long as we KO Beldum before she commands her sisters to use their magic, this fight's a wrap. Though we have to be quick with taking Marilyn out, as she can actually increase her attack power with charge. And it will be a long time before we can fully block 4 damage in a single strike. They have low HP by now though, so it's not a big deal. With the Shadow Sirens defeated, we have now recruited Flurry in our ranks. As much as I love her, she's the worst partner we've encountered yet for the challenge we're doing. Her skills are better suited for taking attacks and restoring HP, but that's not a valuable trait here where damage taken forces us to try again. Oh, like in her solo challenge, she really does suck. Not in a good way either.
Can't touch this.
Not a challenge at all. You can honestly just buy 6 HP drains and use them all across the first 3 turns to win this. So long as you guard the first stomp, you're golden. Regarding the star power you get here, clock out, we'll talk about it later during chapter 3. Not much took place leading up to the start of that chapter, just helping the Mafia. Yeah, this town is weird. We're then tasked with fighting many regular enemy fights with different conditions to make the fights harder. I guess me doing my own self-imposed challenge wasn't enough. Rebel also sees it fair to impose additional rules on top of it. Some of the conditions were annoying, like banning me from using my hammer against a spiky enemy like Dark Craw, or outright forbidding me from using flower points. But at least I never had it happen where Grubba forced me to let enemies damage me. That's an impossible condition if I ever get it. I did end up deciding midway through the minor league that I'd rather fight through the Pit of 100 Trials for a spell, so I did just that in hopes of rescuing Piney Jr.'s dad. I just really want to be able to make money quickly, and the reward you get for this trouble, the silver card, allows you to buy gold bars with your Pianta tokens. There's also the availability of Fire Drive there, which is a handy badge for certain fights you just want to speed up a tad. We can also find Last Stand here, and this badge is completely useless. It halves the damage you take from enemy attacks, but so long as the damage received isn't already at 0, the attack will always do at least 1 damage. Maybe if ever I try this challenge in the original Paper Mario there would be merit, but here, none to speak of.
Can't touch this.
Regarding the Iron Adonis twins, it's here we need to talk about the second potential criticism I've seen for this challenge. Namely the fact that tools to limit your foe's ability to hit you like Boost Sheets, Sleepy Sheep, Pretty Lucky Badges, etc. exist. It's a no damage challenge, not a no hit challenge. Banning tools like these simply would not make any sense. And even if you object, the Ironclaps fight exists to shoot this complaint in the head. These two can only be hurt by knocking one into the other, which demands a specific partner. And because they have 6 HP, while Yoshi's Gulp has only 4 attack power, this move demands being used twice. This wouldn't be a problem if the Ironclaps' damage wasn't so high, but they both have 4 attack power. And to make matters worse, their attacks pierce defense, so options like Damage Dodge, Coop's Defense, and Courage Shells won't work here. And the fact they do 4 damage per hit also means they dish out a total of 8 in a single turn, which just so happens to be the maximum HP of Coop's Shell Shield. The only option available to us to make this run even remotely possible from this point forward without relying on luck is using a boost sheet, forcing these two to miss us and winning the fight with 2 gulps afterwards. Unless, of course, you wanted me to. Regarding Yoshi, he's a great partner for dealing damage and offers some solid defensive skills. His initial power is weaker than Goombella though, and being unable to take damage limits his potential by a lot, as I can't just bulldoze enemies with Mega Rush P like I normally do. After all, we can't take damage.
Can't touch this.
Eventually, after encountering and running away from Bowser, someone who we have no good reason to even bother trying to fight, we were up against this extremely unfortunately named character. I decided this would be a good time to experiment with a recently gained badge, Charge. When used, Mario's next attack's power is increased by 2, and it was a good option here to wipe out Rock Hawk before his HP could fall low enough to trigger one of his stronger attacks and actually damage me. It also helped that I had Yoshi ranked up so he'd learn Mini Egg, a move that can shrink enemies when hit and reduce their attack power by 2. After he's defeated, we may have become Glitz Pit champions, but the crook running the joint is still at large.
Can't touch this.
Now, Macho Grubba could have very easily been a big problem, but I decided not to worry about it here. So let me explain Clock Out for a spell. It pretty much invalidates every boss you encounter in this entire game except for like 2, or really 2.5. All enemies and bosses have their own set resistance to stop status. But if this move is successful, they're essentially frozen in time for 3 turns. I don't clock out often, but for this fight, I use this move here to force Scrapbook to be unable to move after he burns a turn to make himself fast. A status that allows him to attack twice in a single turn. But if he's forced to stop, well, it doesn't matter how fast he is if he can't move. You can be the fastest thing alive, but if you're not moving, you're no faster than a man tripping on his way to the market. So from here, we basically eviscerate him with our strongest attacks and end chapter 3 of our newest move, Power Lift in tow. This is a really fun move to use. It allows you to boost your attack and defense at the same time. And with it, a lot of future boss fights become a lot less daunting as well. Though funny enough, we start getting badges that can actually boost Mario's defense too, like Defend Plus at the foot of chapter 4. Definitely appreciated in a challenge like this, where random stage props can bonk you square in the head.
Can't touch this.
This fight should have honestly gone much worse than it did. Having 40 max HP and multiple attacks that can ignore defense, stopping it, well, I'd say dead, but well, you know, in its tracks is a must. I once again tried to clock out, but it was unsuccessful. And the only reason I didn't lose on the spot was Atomic Boo took a sweet time to charge an attack, and it was Boo Breath. One of 2 moves it has that don't ignore defense. As for the other move, it's kinda like Flurries Body Slam. In any case, I had a Shell Shield active, and it sponged to hit for Mario. Pretty lucky if you ask me. Then I would try Sleepy Stomp, and it actually worked, giving me ample time to build up some power with Power Lift, and then tucking this Atomic Bully in for some eternal Well, good thing I had more than enough turns of extra attack, huh?
Can't touch this.
Thanks to Power Lift and our newfound defense badges, we can sponge Dupless attacks pretty well. There were some attacks that were pretty awkward to guard because they come out really fast, but so long as we trust our hunches, it was a done deal. This would have been the end of chapter 4, but it really has only just begun, as our partners have abandoned us, making us in fact a lone wolf. But you know, it ain't anything new. After all, I played Twilight Princess before. And Vivian's kinda like Midna, right? Actually, no, not really. Midna's a better waifu. While she's a much beloved partner, I do think little of her in battle. Like, I never felt the need to use her in chapter 4, and I've yet to find a single situation later where I'd actually choose her over Koops or the next partner we have to join our party. In fact, even the rematch with Dupless saw her take a back seat, as I just used Power Lift and proceeded to then power bounce Dupless into submission. Now with chapter 4 behind us, we gain Art Attack as our next special move. To demonstrate on the first few enemies we encounter in chapter 5, it allows us to draw circles around enemies to deal damage. The more the enemy we catch in our circles, the more damage we deal. It's pretty good against regular enemies, so expect to see it a lot when we try to Pit of 100 Trials. There's also a batch helper for down there in Ice Power, which I suggest picking up. And a little while later, we also meet the last required partner in the game, Bobbery. In my opinion, better than Vivian, but a far cry from most other partners. It doesn't help that his basic attack can be prone to triggering stage hazards, so he's someone I seldom use unless it's a last resort.
Can't touch this.
Cortez is not much stronger than Dupless when it comes to raw power, but has a lot of HP in between its 3 phases. Power Lift is once again super effective at taking him down quickly, but a lapse in judgment made the 3rd turn pretty tricky. Fortunately, I have Quick Change, a badge that enables me to switch out partners without exhausting a turn, and even preserve status changes to last longer by having Yoshi attack, switching him out, and then ending the turn with another partner active instead. It's pretty good when you're bad at the game like me. Unfortunately, Cortez is also able to steal the souls of my viewers because of my mistake. Feels almost symbolic of the fact that this far into the video, I have proven unable to maintain your focus for this long. But hey, by chance you're alive and you're still watching this video, thank you for watching. I appreciate the heck out of y'all. After a few more strikes from Yoshi and Mario, Cortez was KO'd, and we've received our 5th Crystal Star and 6th special move, Sweet Feast. It's basically a more expensive Sweet Treat, and it's really not useful in this challenge for that reason.
Can't touch this.
Lord Crump and his squadron of X-Nuts can be a rowdy bunch, with the X-Nuts at their peak having 5 attack power. This is a daunting force to be sure, but we have the defenses now to sponge every single point. And as long as we maintain our defenses and keep up the attack, the first phase of this fight will end before too long. Yes, I said first. The second phase, after Lord Crumb's HP hits 0, gives him a stampede of X-Nuts who can also attack both Mario and his partner one after the other by rolling into them. This ball can prove tricky to guard too, as you must guard both hits separately. If you can manage that, then this fight won't be much trouble. And thanks to Power Lift, we're able to pull the floor from under them all and send them overboard with our overwhelming power. Chapter 5 is now complete. Now, before we spend our 3 days of excess en route to Chapter 6, we have a new badge to pick up called Double Dip. This badge will come in very handy from this point forward, and we will gain a lot of mileage out of it. It allows us to use more than a single item on one character for our turn, and it enables certain strategies, which I will have a field day seeing how you react to them all. It also was a good time to seek out the up arrow within Hooktail Castle now that Bobbery is by our side. And with this, we gain access to the Ultra Zone, allowing us to rank up all of our partners even further. I actually don't think I ever properly explained this mechanic, but if you ever find 3 Shine Sprites in the overworld, you can exchange them to Merlin and Rogueport to increase your partner HP and attack by a preset amount. You also gain new moves, like the previously mentioned Mini Egg for Yoshi all the way back in Chapter 3. We're able to rank up a bunch of our partners, but the only one truly relevant for Chapter 6 is Goombella, and we'll explain why that is after 3 days of excess.
This.
As easy as this boss was, I really went overboard trying to overcomplicate it. To harm the main body, you have to first defeat its miasmas. They don't have a lot of HP though, so any screen-wide attacking items to do at least 4 damage will immediately wipe them all out. Afterwards though, I'm able to wipe this boss out with 2 Power Punch boosted multi-bunks from Goombella. Power Punch is an item that increases the attack of whoever consumes it by 2 for 3 turns, while multi-bunk is essentially Power Bounce. And since Goombella is Ultra ranked, the added power from the Power Punch and the couple of Power Plus P badges gives her a whopping 7 attack power, allowing her multi-bunks to dish out 25 damage per turn if at least 5 hits are gotten per use out of the move. Smorg was KO'd on turn 2 after 2 of these were used on it, and the Chapter 6 boss has been knocked out. And with us now setting foot in Poshly Heights, we are also able to reach the 6th Crystal Star and a second to final special move, Showstopper. This move can let you one-hit KOs on enemies, or even bosses if you're lucky. I don't rely on it too much outside of the Pit of 100 Trials though, where it is a fantastic move to use there, that's also half the cost of Art Attack. And speaking of which, it's high time we checked the Pit out and took it out. Normally, this is done after the game is beaten, but I decided to do it in Chapter 7 after making some headway through the General White chase. And now, in addition to having almost all the star powers, we also have our most powerful boots and hammer to give Mario more damage output, as well as enough defensive patches to comfortably take up the 2 damage from Waver stage props, which can't happen because after level 20, stage props like freaking forks can fall from the sky. Yes, really, this game can just randomly drop forks on your head. And to top it all off, all of our partners are Ultra ranked, which just may be a saving grace for scary enough fights deep in the pit. The only thing I have left to do then is to do some set readjusting with Chet's Repo. Yep, it's time we commit the forbidden crime and lower from 10 our max FP back down to 5. What, did you think I'd go to Route of Danger Mario? Nah, Danger Mario is for wusses. My idol Coop says so. And yeah, that's the third complaint I see the Tractor's having.
Can't touch this.
Let's discuss strategy. The Pit of 100 Trials is a gauntlet of 100 rooms that as you fight wave after wave of enemies with only occasional breaks in fighting every 10 rooms. The lower you go, the harder the fights get, and the greater the risk of eventually getting hit, even once. The earlier fights in general don't offer much in the way of challenge, but enemies are bulky enough to demand you regularly use FP or star power to quickly win. And we don't have a lot of FP to go around either, plus I typically need as much BP as possible. FP pluses are handy for this purpose, But since we don't have a lot of BP early on with all the badges I have to have on for safety's sake, it's where Flower Finder and my Flower Savers get to finally shine. Flower Finder guarantees you have flowers drop after a battle, and otherwise it increases the yield so that you can restore FP more quickly, while Flower Savers reduce the FP cost of your moves. These badges, alongside multi-bounce, make for an FP efficient screen clear that makes the first 30 rooms in the pit child's play. Zap Tap is also found here, but it's super situational. Outside of a couple of fights deep in the pit, it won't do us any good. Leading into room 40, we encounter Parabuzzies, enemies with enough HP and defense where multi-bounce can't OKO off of a single use, but Goombella is able to make up for our lack of power. There's also Shady Koopas, which if we're not fast, can prove very dangerous if flipped over. But so long as we first strike with our Ultra Hammer spin, they won't survive a multi-bounce from Mario after the fact anyway. I would talk more about the stretch of fights, but I found the one and only mover in this entire gauntlet and skipped most of them. And at the end, we get Pity Flower, which for obvious reasons is completely useless. It only activates if you take damage, and that's all you really need to know. Leading up to room 50, spiky enemies and lava bubbles call this area their home, so both Spike Shield and Ice Power are preferred. Poison Pokies have just enough HP to make multi-bounce not work, and so here, I got more accustomed to using Showstopper and ending these fights in a flash. Rallywink also saw some use here, since I had enough BP to comfortably equip some of my FP pluses and keep them on. After the first 30 minutes, we snagged the bag known as a Strain Sack, doubling our inventory limit from a max of 10 items to a max of 20 items instead. Leading up to room 60, we encounter enemy formations that can be cleared by a couple of multi-bounces supplemented by Rallywink. The only outlier here are Moonclips, which have a whole 5 defense, but once again, Ultra Hammer first strikes will make up the difference as nothing here can resist being sent backwards. As for what enemies actually are capable of that, we'll find those in the rooms leading up to the 70s. So far, we've been doing pretty well, but these first 60 levels are generally considered a warm-up. Let's now begin the real challenge of the pit.
Can't touch this.
There's nothing to really mention as far as pit rewards here or later, as they're both double dip badges. However, difficulty from this point forward goes up considerably to the point where I feel the need to run away and reassess what badges I have equipped in my active partner. And I don't always run away either. It's also here I realize I don't have the simplifier badges, which not only make action commands easier, but they also make running away easier. So needless to say, this gets really tense. Dark Cross also start appearing here, which pretty much require using Showstopper to defeat quickly. It's funny to me, by the way, that this star power is genuinely useful here, but where it's found is surrounded by enemies that are extremely resistant to Showstopper. It's such bad game design, and it's as if you're supposed to think it's a bad move. The rooms leading up to the 80s are where I started to feel the pressure of this gauntlet. Enemies like Wizards have enough defense where multi-bounce is no longer a viable attack option, and Fire Drive becomes an overall better move as this attack ignores defense and has a higher base power to fire off of. And even that isn't a catch-all solution because we also encounter enemies impervious to fire and even heal off of it. It doesn't help either that Wizards are that enemy that your Super Hammer and Ultra Hammer can't knock backwards. This is where we're forced to adapt on a battle-by-battle basis, instead of relying on a specific set of badges for the string of 10 rooms. Koops also saw some action here, as his Shell Slam is a reliable supplementary attack that pierces defense when we see Wizard loadouts with change humps mixed in. So long as we stay wary though, this string of rooms can likewise be concluded.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Well, that was almost a disaster. For those of you who don't know, audience thrown hazards pierce defense. That very well would have forced me back to the beginning if I didn't notice it in time. All in all, these last 30 rooms took about 45 minutes. Yeah, that sounds about right. And the badge available here is Bump Attack, which has no battle use whatsoever. The rooms leading up to the 90s forced my hand to rely on special moves a lot. Art Attack especially was excellent here, but it costing most of my max SP really limited me on how much I could actually use it. Often, I was forced to run away and recharge after a first strike. Other times, I actually needed help from my more niche partners like Admiral Bobbery. Amidst these points of conflict though, the enemies being so strong here also mean I'm able to level up very frequently, and as you can already see by the curtains, I became an A-list star. This actually forces me to invest in more defense to protect against falling forks. But we're nearing the point where we have so much BP, we have more than we know what to do with now. After all, here is the last area where we need Spike's shield for any reason, and we can focus on other badges for battle, and I'll have plenty of firepower to go around. Regarding the rooms leading up to 100, it almost feels like a victory lap. We are able to dispatch most enemies here fairly easily thanks to the lack of quintuple elite wizards, and there being few enough enemies per fight that art attack comfortably works here. And we're never really starved for star power either because Bob-Oaks were extremely common here and are some of the most easy enemies to set up against. Their whole shtick is an absurdly strong attack they fire off at the end of 5 total turns, when leading up to that, they're pretty much harmless. Plenty of time to appeal and build up that crowd. Amazing Daisies also exist here, and thanks to our combination of art attack to surgically wipe out their allies and good old shell sound to finish them off, we're making bank. About the last fight of note before we reach the big bad pit boss is the encounter with 5 Swampires in room 98. This is where Zap Tap becomes great, but we have our partner to worry about still. Turns out, Bobbery is a great choice here. His hold fast skill protects him from these little suckers. Yeah, this move gives Bobbery a type of counter status that makes him detonate upon contact. It's actually really good here as he hurts Swampires to try to steal his HP, and with Mario rushing to stomp these bats out, we're sitting pretty. With that all said, we've now reached the end of the pit with 99 rooms of the pit now being behind us.
You can't touch this.
Well, how about we discuss the last point of complaint I can see coming from a challenge like this just a little bit further. Namely the idea of using Danger Mario through checked repo and just smashing everything in seconds per fight. Earlier, I ridiculed this idea, as I think there's no honor to be found in relying on Danger Mario for a challenge run. Personally, I find it a lot more fun to manipulate damage taken to fall to 1 HP and smashing bosses with Mega Rush and Power Rush badges. Unfortunately, in a challenge like this where we can't take damage, that's not really an option. But hey, the point of this challenge is not taking damage. And so what do we define as damage in this game? The way I see it, a loss of HP is only considered damage if either A, you touch a hazard in the overworld, or B, you lose HP in battle with the amount indicated by that star with a number in it. By that logic, I would not consider point swaps to be taking damage. And wouldn't you know it, I used one earlier in the pit a bit after the audience tried to bonk Koops with a rock. So I ask, should we prohibit point swaps too, if they technically don't damage the user? I don't think so. And yeah, I do have both Mario and his partner's copy of Mega Rush, as well as even Mario's Power Rush badge. And through some strategic finagling with my double dip badges to get Mario to only 1 HP left and some boost cheese for protection, we are able to crush Bonetail in as few as 4 turns, and now claim to beat the Pit of 100 Trials without technically taking damage whatsoever.
Destruction!
That was emphatic. That was amazing. Mortality. Are you watching?
Wasn't that a fun detour? I sure as heck hope it was worth it. And all it took was roughly, 2.5 hours total. What am I doing with my life?
You can't touch this.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it, this fight was easy. This boss may have 6 attack total, but we have plenty of defense boosting options from Defend Plus, Damage Dodge, and Power Lift. We're able to just barely null Magnus 2's attacks with +2 defense, and the extra attack power served us very well. The X punches fired out after we deal a bit of damage to him do hit harder than our defense would be able to protect against, but multi-bounce can easily drop them all. To be honest, this is a fight where Vivian would likely be preferable, but once again, Koops was my partner of choice. I opted for him here because his extra defense make up for the lack of BP I had to go around. Though for you all who love Vivian so much, I did give her some spotlight with the Cross-X fight and the X-Nox Fortress. Anyways, after some power bounces, Magnus 2 ended up trying his Audience Cannon, an attack that hits 10 times for 3 damage per hit. It's a scary attack, but if your defense is high, it's quite harmless. Not a lot really is up to this boss either, he really went down without much of a fight. And now we've unlocked the final special move, Supernova. This move for 6 star power slams every enemy on the screen for 15 damage. It doesn't really give much value for us thanks to our previous star powers, but it's the last one we get, so we may as well take it. And now Chapter 8 is within reach for us. But the sheer fact that just about every significant boss there has an attack that pierces defense forces us to think ahead and buy some boost sheets. And those boost sheets are gotten while we spend 3 more days of excess. Well, don't expect too much. It wasn't like I had any failures in the pit of Wednesday trials. Alright, now to open up the Chapter 8 video and edit. Wait. What? Yeah. The past hour and a half of me making progress through Chapter 8 is all unusable. The file is corrupted, and I can't actually show the fights in this session. Fortunately, I stopped recording before the Shadow Queen, so there will still be that, but since I can't show you the actual fights as they were, I have to use some of my old save files to replicate the fights and provide you with some kind of visual. I tried my hand at drawing these scenes out, but I don't want to get this video flagged for child activity. I'm autistic, not artistic. Also, I have Miss Mouse, so she gets a chance to say hi.
Can't touch this.
Shell Slam and Supernova will end this fight on the first turn. Who needs Vivian or Bobbery, am I right?
Cope.
Can't touch this.
With my sheer abundance of boost sheets, Goombella would double dip them on herself and Mario, with Mario then proceeding to repeatedly power bounce. Turn 1, Gloomtail breathes poison. Turn 2, he Earthquake since his HP is below 49. And though my boost sheet wears off here, I know I'm safe because once Gloomtail drops below 33 HP, he charges up for his next attack, Mega Breath, and I'm doing 21 damage per power bounce at the worst. So 2 more of these, and I win the fight on turn 4.
Can't touch this.
Each Shadow Siren took 2 power bounces after once again double dipping boost sheets on Gloombella's turn. 1 bounce on Marilyn, and 1 on Dupless. Beltham has less HP, so I just did a standard jump on her because I have like plus 5 attack, and then I used Supernova to end the fight instantly.
Can't touch this.
This fight went very differently from any other fight in this whole challenge, as I instead relied on Fire Drive to continuously stun Grotus' Scepter and keep him from attacking me. I had Goombella Thunder Rage first though, so the Grotus X's would fall and make Grotus vulnerable to attack. Mario had only plus 1 attack for this fight, since I did have plus 2 from badges like Power Plus and All or Nothing, but I also had FP Drain equipped. This badge reduces Mario's attack power by 1, but restores 1 FP per attack. And this effectively makes Mario's Fire Drive with 2 Flower Sabers cost only 2 FP to use, while less expensive moves like Power Bounce are virtually free. The 1 FP cost is immediately refunded after the move finishes. As for the Grotus X's that spawn every turn afterwards, Mario uses Earth Tremor. Goombella's Riley Link allowed Mario to just rinse and repeat the cycle until his demise.
Can't touch this.
Went the same as most other bosses in Chapter 8. Boost sheets, Power Bounce on Cammy who would never bother to heal, and 3 turns in, she's out. I turn my attention to Bowser, pummel him, and he eventually is a goner. By the way, I had 5 resets. 1 to a first strike from a chain jump, 1 to the Shadow Sirens when an audience member assaulted Goombella with a rock, and 3 to spikes on the narrow catwalk leading to the last couple of bosses. I imagine this late into the video, it wouldn't make sense to reminisce again over my resets over another 3 days.
Can't touch this.
I used Bomb Squad first on Bobbery's turn with Mario, then switching him out with Quick Change to Goombella, and then triple zipping 2 boost sheets and a Shooting Star. For the uninitiated, Bomb Squad is a move that activates on the following turn after it's used. I then proceeded to do a couple of power bounces thanks to Riley Wink, and we skipped the second phase when the Bomb Squad detonated. For this to work, I had to equip every badge I had that increased Mario's attack power that wasn't a Danger or Peril badge. Meaning my 2 Power Pluses, Jumpman, P up, D down, and All or Nothing, giving Mario plus 5 attack power and a starting base attack of 8 on its jump attack. And to trigger phase 2, you have to at least do enough damage to the Shadow Queen to lower her HP below 90. And it wanted to work fast, because on the second turn, the Bomb Squad would detonate, and she also increases her defense by 3, so time really was of the essence. The Shadow Queen's second phase triggers its dialogue normally only once per turn after you're through with attacking her. But Bomb Squad can actually make her dialogue progress more quickly so long as the bombs are spaced far enough apart from each other while still making contact. It then just takes 1 more attack from Mario to trigger phase 3 where our FP is maxed out, and we proceed then to enact the exact same tactic used on Gloomtail, the Shadow Sirens, and Bowser. Boost sheets and power bounces with some Riley Winks and a hint of power lift, showing that yes, you can in fact beat Paper Mario that does in your door without ever taking damage. So the challenge is over, but I guess I can also talk about how this challenge felt to do. No doubt it had moments of being challenging, but I don't think this challenge was still one of the hardest I could have done either. I know I'm saying this in the context of super guards being banned, but I think it's easy to see now why the lack of super guarding didn't really make this challenge much more difficult. If anything, the fact that I can't super guard just meant I was forced to rely on an even more cheap tactic in abusing boost cheats. I ain't complaining though, it wasn't like I wanted to put up with Bonetail's Bite RNG which can't be guarded at all. But still, before plugging more of my content, I just have to give a shout outs to both Ricardo and Splashy for being channel members. Thank you both ever so kindly for your $10 pledges to my channel. Especially you, Ricardo. Couldn't keep going without you, mate. I can already imagine the comments I'll get over how I wasn't the first person to do a run like this, and yeah, I ended up being beaten to the punch by my friend, that one Spy Guy, but I think how we handled our individual runs at least can help set them apart from each other. He went and likewise avoided super guarding and bad charming just like I did, but he also disallowed Shell Shield. I can't really imagine why. It's not like the shield is damage Mario was feeling, but maybe I'm looking too lax at it. I did allow myself to use point shots after all. And no doubt he did push himself pretty hard. We both also did no damage challenges for Super Paper Mario, and while his video was considerably more hardcore than mine, I guess I'll also share that video here, so if you want to see me suffering Paper Mario again, you can. But if you're not interested in that, well, I guess click my channel and see what else you want to watch, because I heard that it's only a good idea to post like one video at a time on these end cards.
Can't touch this.